Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SportsTech Allstars podcast. I've got a returning guest. We don't have too many of those. I've got Jake, who is the CEO and founder of Gemini Sports Analytics, a company who specializes in performance analytics for football, American football, and a bunch of other sports. Jake has been on this show a little over a year ago, May of last year, and since then, they've been busy. They've raised a pretty significant funding round, had around more capital and a bunch of really cool investors. And that has helped this company grow, find a good base in the market, find credibility with their clients, and also a wider audience. I believe that they're getting increasingly active in the European market. So maybe if you're a sporting director or a general manager of a top tier sports organization, this is an episode that you'll be interested in. Jay talks about the product itself, how that has evolved, his learnings as a founder. So founders will also take away quite a bit from the episode, and also what's coming up for them in the near future. Another really good conversation. Hope you enjoy it. All right, Jake, welcome back to the show. It has been a minute since we last spoke, and it seems like in that minute, you've been a busy man, apart from traveling and doing lots of interesting things on the back of a significant bit of runway that you've got. So congratulations on the round that you've closed and all the great stuff and great updates I get from Gemini Sports. But for anybody who didn't catch the previous episode, why don't you set the context once again? Introduce yourself and what exactly it is that you do at Gemini Sports Analytics.
Absolutely, Ronan. It's great to see you. I'm automatically infinitely jealous of anyone enjoying a Berlin summer right now, but it's great to be reconnecting. I'm Jake. I'm the sole non-technical founder of Gemini Sports. We make it easier for sports executives to make data-driven decisions, particularly around roster management and tactics. So, I had the idea for this business when I was a sports scientist for almost a decade in professional sports. I was working for the New Zealand Olympic rugby teams before the 2016 Olympic Games, doing my doctorate with the program. Dissertation was in force velocity and power profiling of sprint testing, and as part of my job and my research, I had to learn SQL and Python and MATLAB programming to process all the data that we were collecting and using for applied research. And it was terrible, and I was terrible at it. And I said, someone has to make this easier. Someone has to make it accessible for the decision makers to actually use all of this data that we keep talking about, but not turning into real decisions. And about 5 years later, I finally had the guts to go full time on this business idea that I had. And I immediately realized that such products exist in many industries, just not the sports industry, which, as much love as I have for it, is still 10 to 15 years behind others. And we're talking about a market where teams are really patting themselves on the back if they have 5 junior analysts who can do a few exciting things with data, but not really all of the things that you need to have an operational data system. Whereas tech companies that have 250 data scientists with a range of skills still feel like their decision makers don't get answers fast enough. So there's a real gap to fill. We raised our first money probably at the peak in 2022 when money felt free, and went and made every mistake that we could on our journey towards product market fit, and have learned that there is a big disconnect between the builders and the consumers of data insights at these sports teams when it comes to deciding who you want to find to put on your roster and how you're going to find the players that fit on your roster for the right prices. There's a disconnect in both how you get that information and how it's presented. And there's a fantastic market of data providers and of data feeds, but not really of tools to use that data. And that's where we come in.
Makes a lot of sense. I especially like your line about making all the mistakes that you could have. It's the journey of being a founder. So maybe let's start there. I think this is when we last spoke. I remember when your round was coming up and you were in the process of, let's say, closing that previous round. What has been the biggest shift from your perspective as a founder? Like, what is the biggest thing that the market taught you that was let's say, a course correction that you had to take to get to this product market fit that is the holy grail that every founder is after?
Yeah, so one thing that fascinates me about advice or heuristics or models of doing things is that you don't need new ways of thinking about it. Most of the time, people just don't listen. or they don't follow the advice. And so some things that will probably sound very familiar to people that I had to learn myself the hard way are people aren't looking to do something new and different. They're looking to do what they were already doing easier, better, faster, in a more clever way than anyone else, and just to be more successful at it. So a good example is nobody was standing around saying that they hate taxis and that they wish a stranger would pick them up in their car. But everyone would like to get from point A to point B more easily. Everyone would like to get from the airport to their house more easily. Everyone would like to be able to get a ride home if they're out drinking more easily, and so forth. And so Uber provided them with a way of doing that more successfully, with a lower barrier of entry. Every general manager, every sporting director at a sports team wants to find better players for better prices that are a better fit to their playing style, and that they can sell for more money in a few years. But it's a total pain right now. And so we're just removing pain point after pain point there. And the other thing is that people want to stay in their native working environments. And at first we were trying to sell analysts on the idea that they wanted to use a no code interface, and they don't really care. They don't really care if it's 10% faster, if they have to learn a whole new workflow. They want to stay in Python. They want to stay in SQL. And so we're letting them. And we're going straight to the target user that I always had the vision of, the general manager. And where does the general manager live? On their phone. They don't want to pull out 4 different desktop apps with 4 different data feeds right now and sift through that and try and get information. They want one app on their phone where they can see what their scouts have to say about a player. They can see what the data models are how they're rating the player. And they want to run similar player models. They want to run scenarios, and they want to be able to understand and communicate information in one place.
So it sounds like you almost shifted slightly the main customer profile from the analyst to actually, let's say, who the analyst is serving, and try to make it as simplified and easy for that person with GM or maybe the leadership group, whoever's the decision maker, and give them access in the easiest, simplest, quickest way possible.
That's right. I think, said another way, we always had that original intention, and we accidentally built something that it's in between what a general manager could use and what an analyst wants to use.
Interesting. All right, cool. So the product has evolved. Well, maybe not the core product, but certainly the way it's delivered has evolved. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. Who's evolved? Who has it evolved for? Who are the people that you've been working with that have taught you these lessons? Which clients or pilots or whatever you've been working, where you've implemented the product that is giving you this insight?
Yeah, our first customer was in the NFL, the Indianapolis Colts, and we signed them a little over a year ago. They just renewed. And our second customer was in college basketball, in the University of Virginia. And then we were able to reach over into English football with Queens Park Rangers. In March they signed, and we're incredibly excited about that partnership. So those are the 3 that I can share publicly right now. And you know, soccer or football is such a fascinating sport in that just about every team of the 350 or so in UEFA have the same data sources, or one of the, a few of the same data sources, the same staff structure, and the same objectives. Really only, Manchester City and Real Madrid don't, need to at least try to turn a profit or break even, depending on how much they're following regulations, right? And so they all have kind of the same staff needs and the same pain points. And so that's much more scalable. So we've leaned towards that. And I can't say enough great things about my relationship with all 3 of the teams I mentioned, but especially Queens Park Rangers, where, I'm proud to say that we have really the top executives at that team using our application every day. And obviously I'll respect the privacy on what exactly we're achieving together, but their processes and their ability to, with a constrained budget, just moves so much faster when it comes to deciding the players that they want to pursue, how they want to pursue them, and what price is right for potentially purchasing them, is something that we're proud of, and that has helped to evolve our understanding of their user experience needs.
I think that's one of the things that is kind of underrated by founders, is that your first clients are pretty much your investors, if nothing else. Apart from paying you a check, which might be, let's say, big or small, depending on how you price your product, their investment of time,
That's right.
is so,
Yeah.
so valuable.
Yeah.
Like, you want them to be heavy users,
Yeah.
and you probably let them have the product for free if you could, but you shouldn't, because you want them to pay, because that's how you get them invested, and
Sure.
so on. The psychology for the side. But that investment of time is so valuable. You've already mentioned that you've got QPR who giving you that feedback on the continent, a couple of American companies. I also know that you spent some time recently across Europe hopping around. You didn't show up in Berlin. You keep talking about it, but you were too busy to. I will say that for another one. So
Yeah.
is Europe now like where you're
Yeah.
growing more? Are you also focusing on the US market? Like, walk me through how you're looking at a target base of like where are you growing your customer base?
Yeah, you'll see more of us in college football and more of us in Major League Soccer as well, because that is a great testing ground for a lot of evolution in the game, I think. Their Apple deal has really transformed that league. But to what you said, look, I think Europe is going to be our biggest market segment in the next 2 years. And I think just to layer one on your comment earlier, Ron, early adopters are hard to find. There's a lot
Mhm.
of people who want to look like early adopters. There's a lot of people who want to have some press releases about them using some new tech, but people who are really willing to roll up their sleeves and give you feedback and really willing to engage in conversations like, vulnerably, what's the delta between what my boss put on the contract and what I was hoping to get out of this? Or what do I need to not only feel comfortable staking my own job success on how much this product helps me, but also to tell all my friends about this product, and then you triangulate that with what you're capable of and what your resources are, and finding people who will engage in those kind of dynamics with you is very different, very different.
Yeah, invaluable, invaluable. Those early clients, like you really have to treat them with kid gloves and protect them and stuff,
Yeah.
and try to grow with them as much as you can. All right. It also sounds like, is it accurate for me to say that it sounds like you're growing more in football slash soccer? Like, is that the first kind of big sport where you're looking to find traction?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned that your first client was the NFL, so American football, but
Yeah.
you've evolved more to football slash soccer now.
Yeah, interesting. I often say football and football because those are two sports that we've really done all of the work so far on what we call the data layer. So organizing all of the major data sources for that sport into a unified instance with matched player IDs, which is a huge pain for teams, and a lot of enrichment on top of the data that makes it more useful than just 1 + 1 = 2. I think when you asked earlier lessons, another heuristic everyone hears is don't try and be everything for everyone, and try and avoid death by lack of focus. And I think we learned those lessons the hard way as well, where just because of who our clients were, we ended up doing a lot of the data engineering and data architecture work in football and football first, and we are making the decision to not. I would say not solicit business in many other sports right now, where we're very much focused on finding those partners in those other sports who want to work with us to develop the different pieces for those sports. But really, we're so well set up to succeed in the two football codes that's where we're going to focus the most for now.
Makes sense because you also mentioned that your personal origin story was in rugby, so a completely different sport, which I guess if
Yeah.
you wanted to, you could go tap into again at some point.
A beautiful, rich cultural sport that has not that much funding and not that much sophistication yet. And so we will pick our moment there.
Yeah, makes sense to do that. All right, and now I want to spend time a bit, maybe from your learnings as a founder, because I know that our audience, we have a lot of founders and also investors, and we'll deal with the investors in a second. But as a founder, because you've gone through a couple of significant cycles of learning, of raising money, of now making mistakes, deploying that money, and then looking to come back, and like all of that, because we all do it. What was the biggest shift there for you in terms of now bringing on, hey, I have these experts or these like leaders on my cap table. How do you work with them to help grow out your business? Apart from, because I know the kind of people that you have on your cap table or that you raise from are not just people who are signing a check. Like they're the kind who can open a few doors as well. So how has that process been for you?
Oof, where to begin? I mean, we have such wonderful people around me. When I looked around our boardroom about 10 days ago in our quarter 3 meeting, I just thought, how lucky are we? Not only the caliber, but also like not one person in the room who isn't carrying a lot of weight. And so we're very, very blessed in that regard. I think a couple of lessons I would share with other founders in that regard are you have to make it as simple as possible for people to connect you with others. And it's not just having a great forwardable email template. It's you staying on top of the cadence, you staying on top of the follow-ups, you being really intentional about who you want them to connect you with, what their job title, what that person's job title should be, what exactly you're asking of them, and really why should they care? Because people can and will misinterpret the materials that you send over. They will send them to the wrong member of staff, and all of a sudden you'll be 4 rungs down the ladder taking a first call that you probably could have gotten on your own. So being really thoughtful, especially if you're talking about like ownership proxies and those types of things, they get hit up every day. So they have to know top line, what is your product offer? Why should they want to talk to you, and what are you asking of them? And recognize there's only so many times you can call in those favors. And of course, everyone wants that yesterday all the time. I have to say, we've got plenty of scar tissue mutually where, I think the problem we're solving and then the concept presented is very exciting to people. So we get first calls very easily. And now we find ourselves talking to a lot of folks that we might have talked to well over a year ago. And we're saying, hey, we actually have a viable product now. And it's totally different than what you previously saw. Please, let's talk again. And most of the time they'll take that call. But I would say, like, don't use up all your bullets too fast. And investors will really respect you for saying, hey, let's do this push in 6 months. That makes a huge difference to them. But also recognize they've probably got 50 portfolio companies to think about. They've probably got 3 other hats that they wear in their lives and businesses. They're not always going to be thinking of you or how you can help them. So make it as easy as possible for them.
I think that's a great piece of advice. It's kind of like it's like a different type of grandma test, like having somebody else explain your business, but do it like that. And which is why I always say, like, I mean, of course you can sell yourself, but how is somebody sell you when you're not in the room? Because
Yeah.
a lot of the times that key decision is happening when you're not in the room. Like you can push and you can push that kind of backdoor, back channel, whatever you want to call it, when it's like, should we? And those moments to make yourself really simple and really
Yeah.
clear and have that value
Yeah.
proposition be really clear is important.
Ron, I don't have a marketing bone in my body. I've never had a minute of being taught any of those skills, but I've realized the hard way that you have to have that messaging. You have to have that
Yeah.
one-liner that you might think you've communicated it, but you should communicate it again and again to your investors
Yeah.
of when you explain our business, this is what you should be saying. And that line, unfortunately, should be evolving all the time. It's one of the hardest things we've encountered. We messed it up in every way. And what we've learned, like, someone might interpret a line completely different than how you intend, and you're going to have to evolve it because of that.
Yeah, yeah, totally true. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what kind of inputs that a founder could glean of you and your journey. Now let's shift gears into like how we can talk to the market. I know your offering has evolved, and while we were just prepping the 5 minutes that we had before we started recording, you said something really interesting, which is that the product has moved from a nice to have to a must have. What has changed, and why is it a must have now?
Yeah, I think it's so key for any early stage company to ask themselves over and over, so what? Why should people care? What is the point of actually integrating this, and why is someone going to make a decision to purchase your product? And those are going to be painful exercises. And is what you're building actually addressing what you think it is? So I think we built a faster horse, and I think we failed to build a car the first time around, and so really we're doing what we always set out to do. We're just executing this time, and executing on putting data insights in the hands of the people who actually make decisions in a way that works for them, for their user experience needs.
How's the feedback been from the market? I want to also talk about, and I ask a lot of founders this because you have so many products that founders are pitching, especially for B2B services to, let's say, that buyer profile, which is a sports org. At the end, it's going to come out of the GM's budget, where it might be to the marketing team, in your case, the performance team, or whoever the case may be. How is that buying cycle going for you? Is there still a lot of education? Is it like, hey, this is a clear problem. I need you guys to solve it, but I don't have money? Or are you seeing now that this is kind of coming together a bit where the education is there are budgets in place, and now it's a bit like, hey, I have to just beat out another vendor. In which case, then it's on me. I know how to differentiate versus no, I have to solve these first two things, which is
Yeah.
explain to him what it is we do, and then I have to find some money to do it.
Yeah, someone said to me that if you're going to be showing someone a problem that they didn't realize they have, which is a way of saying what true disruption might be represented as, then expect a bare minimum 18-month sales cycle.
Yeah.
No startup can afford that, right? So how do you hack it? How do you work through the corners? And I think we still run into that challenge where people didn't know that this kind of thing exists. There is no competitor, so they have to go find budget where it didn't exist yet, which leads to you have to be on the desk of someone who's got the ability to shake the piggy bank, so to speak, and to whom the amount we're asking for is reasonable. Part of the kind of the double whammy of accidentally appealing to the wrong user is the price point we were asking for was often more than they were getting paid themselves. And no one likes asking for that kind of product. No one. And so I'm not going to say that reorienting our focus or holding ourselves accountable to speaking to the right person, to the general manager and sporting director, has made all challenges go away, but it has, it's removed a lot of friction.
Yeah, and find that key buyer. First of all, getting on that general manager slash sporting director's desk is a huge challenge because he or she is, I mean, that's the premium real estate, right? Everybody wants to get there.
It is, Ron.
Um,
And sorry, quickly, one thing on that as well is thinking about messaging, like we said before, any good leader is a good delegator. And so any good general manager is going to look at things and figure out whose desk should I put this on.
yeah,
And so figuring out a way to stay on their desk is almost as hard as getting there in the first place.
makes sense. And that just means you have to demonstrate value. Like, hey, this is what we've done, this is what we can
Exactly.
do.
Exactly.
And now I need to just do it for you and
Yeah.
help that person make that decision much better. All right, let's come back into the product itself now. We've set the context of what you guys do, who you do it for. What are you excited about building in terms of, I'm talking about in the next 12, 18 months? Like, what are the trends that you're watching that you're tapping into that will help that client who is also using a product currently or maybe thinking about it, but hey, this is what we're doing now, but this is what we're also going to be doing in the next, upcoming period of time that will help you in a significant way.
Yeah, so I think the two things are providing that mobile experience we discussed, and then the kind of componentized models and metrics underneath what some would call like a semantic layer, a chat-enabled layer. And I'm always adamant that chat is not a product, and anytime you see someone show you that, run away. But any product nowadays has to be chat-enabled, right? Everyone's seen what's out there, and they want that kind of user experience. So building on those two, you know, I think if we think about technology nowadays, there's no technology moat in 2024. There's no unique selling point of technology. It does not exist. So the edge comes from user experience, and it comes through distribution, which in this case is onboarding, right? And configuration to the user. So I had a blind spot where I said most practitioners do not want someone to bring them the answers. They hate consultants. They don't want someone to come and try and be smarter than them. But that led me to not realize what we have now, which is people are thrilled if you do the first 80% of work for them. So we've built out these template models for player recruitment, for talent ID, for player value projection, which allow someone in onboarding to go 19 of the final 20% that we configure things to their needs, to their player profiles, to their special sauce, to how they view a defensive midfielder or a wide receiver, and then iterate around that final 1% all the time as their user experience, rather than having to do all of their work, because teams do not have resources to build a front end, to be a software shop. They don't want to do that. And teams also don't have the resources to drop what they're doing and build a model that compares how midfielders in Portugal would perform in the Premier League, or to build really robust models of player age curve projections and how much could I sell this guy for in 3 years. They might do a little bit of that, but they don't have the ability to operationalize it and productionalize it and do it at scale. So by us bringing a number of the things that we know they have had on their to-do list for years, and baking it into a mobile-friendly, general manager-friendly user experience, we're really connecting that builder and that consumer, where the analysts can sit in the back end in their native work environment in an API, through Python notebooks, and be populating that final 1% over and over, while they trust their sports background partners at Gemini to have done the first 80% of the work before anything, and 19 of that last 20 in onboarding. So what I'm excited about is bringing this mobile experience to general managers and just building out over and over our team, what our team is providing in terms of componentized models and metrics.
And this is the big challenge with highly customizable, not highly custom, but highly customizable solutions where, hey, yeah, you can configure everything to, you want to choose the background color to all the graphics that you want. Not really. No, I don't have the time to sit and do that. And especially if you're making me choose color, I'm lost. And you've probably lost me on the product as well. So I think this is another thing as well to pick what you believe is important. And the market also will evolve over time and tell you what they think is important. So you start with the templates, you go with feedback and evolve over time. And then you hopefully find that product market fit that you were talking about. Cool. So mobile is a big thing that you've talked about. You've mentioned it a few times, which is the interface layer, the interaction layer. Like how exactly is my product being consumed and how is it being used? So that's a big thing with the interface. You mentioned earlier that your sports that you're focusing on are also clear for now. I don't expect that to change too much. I want to take a step out into a general market trend about anything that you see happening around sports tech within your segment, or just in terms of evolution of AI or whatever the case may be, that is something that you're keenly looking at and either might incorporate or just say that, hey, that's something that we can maybe sit alongside or partner with, some solution provider in that area. But just generally in this space, performance analytics space that interests you.
I think there's three, and I've touched on them all at some point, so I'll go through them quickly. Like I think you have a boiling of frustration around the return on investment that owners and general managers have made into analytics departments, where I think if I could be a little rude, they might have thought that hiring some smart engineers would solve everything for them. And then they realize, hang on, there's such a thing as an analyst, and then there's a data engineer, and then there's a machine learning person. And staffing all that out is extraordinarily expensive, and there's a lot of turnover, and it doesn't work quite the way they thought it would. So they're seeking outside partners to complement those groups and maybe keep a smaller group of subject matter experts. Right? They've always said, like, they'd rather have a football analyst than a data engineer who they have to teach football to. The second thing I think is that optical tracking data in every sport is just a giant headache that very few teams have really made much use of. And just because the NFL and their partnership with Amazon Web Services is providing them next-gen stats doesn't mean that teams are really leveraging that, much less architecting it in any kind of automated way. So teams are really looking for some outside help to munge that and make the most of it. And then finally, just that I think that there was this moment where data visualization, people thought, oh, if you have some nice Tableau dashboards with some pretty, spider graphs or dot plots or violin charts, then you're going to satisfy the general manager. But, another reason why we're leaning into mobile is like, that's not necessarily their workflow. They don't want to sit on a desktop with a bunch of big dashboards that they have to have explained to them. They want things even simpler than that. And that's one of the hardest things about business right now, is that everyone wants to seem the most sophisticated, but really simplicity is what wins.
I guess the big learning from that is that, yeah, there's something that you want to build, but there is a way to build, like your audience wants to receive it as well. As you said, I like that line. They all want to seem sophisticated, but they just want one big number glowing on their dashboard, which is, hey, just boil. Yeah, exactly. Just tell me what to do. And makes sense. Fantastic, Jake. It is always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Give me a shout out. Tell me what call to action you want to send out to our audience. I don't know, I guess every founder is constantly raising. Maybe you're hiring as well. Maybe you're looking for partners in certain geographies. What do you want to share?
Oof, I appreciate that, Ron. Look, I think I would just say, if you're a sporting director of a soccer team that, you've got a couple of analysts for sure, but you're wanting to move a little bit faster, and you want to leave them alone to do their most sophisticated work, and maybe do some data things yourself, and work in a way that's a little more efficient with them in how you work through the transfer market, then give us a call, because we'd love to help.
Brilliant. And it can be from anywhere, because Jake can catch a flight and be wherever you need to be.
I can. I think my dog sitter is going to be a millionaire by the end of the summer. But Ron, really, thank you so much for having us on. I love what SportsTech X does, and I love what your fund does. And please keep up the great work. And thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you, my man. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that? LinkedIn, email?
Jake@GeminiSports.ai.
Super. We'll drop that in the show notes as well. And before I let you go, my last question to ask, it's always my favorite one to do. Of course, you've heard this question before. I want to know what has been your favorite sporting moment. I will be honest, I didn't check. I mean, I quickly ran through the episode and I didn't listen to what this moment was. So you can feel free to repeat or give me a fresh one. Whatever, it's up to you.
Which one did I give?
I don't know either myself. So
okay. Well, great. Yeah. We're both going in blind. Okay. I would say historically, the Miracle on Ice of the 1980 U.S. men's Olympic hockey team was pretty cool. A lot of guys from my hometown of Boston in that. I think the film Miracle is one of the best sports films of all time. I'm going to give a bit of a personal one that the other day, the New Zealand Black Ferns women's Olympic rugby team won their second consecutive gold medal. There were 7 or 8 players on the larger roster and then 5 on the field on the day who took home a gold medal that with me on staff in 2016 got just the most heartbreaking silver. And to see them, have their redemption arc. Most of them are retiring after these games. A lot of them were like 24 back then, and it's incredible to see. I'm so happy with them. Sheree Tane, being on the sidelines, one of the last people off the roster for the Olympic Games, but was with the team throughout the whole year. Invited onto the field to celebrate with them, and Michaela Blyde, who was the other person off the roster in 2016, just being out there as a superstar, scoring winning tries. It had me in tears. So congratulations to that whole team.
Brilliant. What a great shout out. And great that you could play part in that journey that it's taken them to, as you said, a consecutive goal.
The tiniest of parts, but just to know those people and to see what they were able to achieve together is just so wonderful for me.
That is true. I'm actually lucky enough, I'm going to be in Paris in a couple of days to take in a bit of the Olympic vibe. Let's see what I can find. I might be getting to watch the Indian men's hockey team either win a bronze or a gold.
Was it England the other day for the first time?
Yeah, play 41 minutes with 10 men, with man down, then won in the shootout. And they played, well, I don't know when this episode is going to be published, but they play Germany tomorrow in the semifinal. Okay. And you'll see. Okay. And that'll determine. Yeah, that'll determine whether I'm watching a bronze game or the gold medal.
Well, you had a full World Cup heartbreak followed by a T20 victory, so let's see if we can follow through on this one.
It should be good. Fantastic. Jake, always a pleasure, my friend. Take care.
Thank you so much, Ron.
All right, that's a wrap for another episode. Always a pleasure to talk to old friends and the cool stuff that Gemini Sports is getting up to. Give them a shout or give them a look up if you haven't already. All right, more to come, as we always have. Take care. See you guys next week. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the SportsTech Allstars podcast with Rohan Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out SportsTechX.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTechDB, at SportsTechDB.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.